From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org.
At the Legislature today, the first of many tort reform bills was up for debate in the House of Delegates. Republicans have said for years such legal reforms are necessary to make the state more business-friendly. Also, lawmakers hear about a new idea to improve state roads and highways. These stories, plus we'll talk with the new minority leaders on the Legislature today. Good evening, I'm Ashton Mara. When a vehicle accident occurs, who is at fault? And how much should those at fault pay in damages? These are questions the House of Delegates grappled with today as they discussed abolishing joint liability and implementing comparative fault. Liz McCormick explains.
House Bill 2002 seeks to do away with joint liability in our state and instead introduce comparative fault. What this means is currently, before the bill, if someone is involved in an accident and is responsible for 30% of the fault, but the other person responsible for 70% of the fault can't pay their share, the person receiving 30% of the fault would take in all the fault. House Bill 2002 would change this and only require the person who is 30% at fault pay 30% of their share. The bill, while many in the House supported what it was trying to convey, many Democrats stood to offer amendments to the bill, ranging from suggestions to offer exceptions to people who are intentionally harmed by someone, to protecting children 14 and under from taking any blame, to an economic impact statement. All of the Democrats' amendments were rejected. Republicans felt all of the additions would just muddy up the focus of the bill to protect everyone. During the fall election campaign, Republican candidates were clear that the state needs tort reform. Today in the House, they got their chance. Delegate John Schott, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, explained the party's position.
So one thing the leadership, or the basic thrust of leadership on both the House and the Senate side, is try to identify those features of our state that are creating a perception that this is not a good place to have a business, to grow jobs, to move to have a career or a profession. And the legal system is one of those areas that's been examined, and there are features of the legal system that contribute to that perception, and there's no one that stands out, but among those features, the concept of joint and several liability is one that is seen as unfair because it creates an uncertainty among the business people, among the community, and among individuals as to the fact that you may end up having to pay more than the share of fault that you bear in an accident.
But Delegate Tim Miley, once the House Speaker, now Minority Leader, resented Schott's assertion that the state is not business-friendly.
You know, we hear a lot about the business climate of the state. Perhaps someone should have shared that with the cracker plant coming. Someone should have shared that with Antero that moved its corporate headquarters to north central West Virginia. Someone should have shared that with Mark West Energy, who has built processing plants in north central West Virginia and spent billions of dollars doing so. Someone should have shared that with, I think it's Southwest Energy, a company who's taken over the assets of Chesapeake Energy, and we're going to have a bill that benefits them up in the Energy Committee today. I stand up on the floor every Thursday and will continue to do so to talk about the jobs available in this state. Someone should have told all those business employers who have jobs available how bad it is to do business in this state. So it gets a little old justifying every effort to take rights away from consumers with the mantra, we need to make our state business friendly, when the unfriendly nature that's been described from West Virginia has been done by these shady outside groups with no objective data to review.
For years, West Virginia has been labeled a judicial hellhole by the American Tort Reform Association. This group accuses the state's legal system of being out of balance. It's a campaign the West Virginia Association for Justice, representing the state's trial lawyers, has criticized. Schott maintains this legislation and says it's necessary to polish the state's legal image.
To the gentleman from the 48th, I am exceptionally pleased that things are going well in north central West Virginia. I wish they were going as well in southern West Virginia. What we're really looking at, folks, is a change in an approach that's been underway for 83 years or so, that the results, I think, speak for themselves. Our children are leaving the state, our grandchildren are leaving the state, except in north central West Virginia, where a spark of the discovery of the Marcellus Shale has caused I'll call it a mini boom, and we're certainly, as West Virginians, all pleased about that. But unfortunately, that's not what we see all over our state. I sometimes ask myself, why would businesses come to West Virginia? And I think that the problem now is that they won't come unless there's something they have to take from us that's already here, like the Marcellus Shale. If a business can go anywhere, it's not going to come to West Virginia. It's just not deemed a friendly place to do business.
The bill passed 74-25, with some of the Democrats voting for it. House Bill 2002 now goes to the Senate for consideration. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Liz McCormick in the House.
Nearly 2 weeks into this legislative session, there are some obvious differences in the way the new Republican majority is running the show. But Democrats have not taken a back seat. Minority Party members of both the House and Senate are still making sure their opinions are heard and considered by their respective chambers. Leading those members through a new role at the State House are the two new minority leaders. Senator Jeff Kessler is an attorney from Glendale, West Virginia, and Marshall County. He was first appointed to the chamber in 1997 and previously served as Senate President and Senate Judiciary Chair. Delegate Tim Miley is also an attorney hailing from Bridgeport in Harrison County. He was first elected to the House in 2004 and is the former House Speaker and House Judiciary Chair as well. Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us.
So let's start with the Republican agenda. They say their top priority is jobs and creating jobs. And in order to do that, they're going after tort reform and eventually tax reform. Delegate, is this the right way to go about creating jobs and a better job climate in the state?
I don't believe so, Ashton. Let me start by saying that everybody wants more jobs and more good-paying jobs in the state of West Virginia. That's not a Republican issue or a Democrat issue. It's a West Virginia issue. So both parties want good, well-paying jobs. But the manner in which the Republican majority is going about it is by taking extreme positions, such as taking away the rights of consumers and individuals for the benefit of large corporate interests. An example of that is we had an amendment today on the bill that was just described on your broadcast that would have put us in line with Texas, which is considered by all to be a jobs-friendly state, a business-friendly state. That created a hybrid approach to what we were trying to do on the floor today. That wasn't good enough for this Republican majority. They wanted to take the most extreme position they possibly could to relieve a corporate wrongdoer in many cases from any additional liability and responsibility and put it on an innocent injured victim who did nothing to cause or create their own set of circumstances or harm. And so that's what I fought against today on the floor. That's what I will always fight against today on the floor. And passing those kinds of extreme bills will do nothing to create jobs in West Virginia. There's only a few criteria to create jobs, in my opinion. Number one, you have to have a market for your product or service. You have to have a qualified workforce in terms of training and skill sets as well as motivation to work, or you have some product that people have to come here to get, like our extraction industries, or some combination thereof. I think we need to be focusing on how we provide skill sets and education and training to our kids coming out of high school and the young adults we have in this state so they can get some of these jobs that are available, certainly in north central West Virginia and in all parts of the state. But as long as we don't have a skilled and trained workforce, businesses are not going to locate here because you can't bring a business here without a trained workforce to work for your business.
Senator, is the workforce the key?
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Workforce, not only workforce development, but increasing our workforce participation. One of the problems, we lead the nation in low participation of our workforce, particularly in those folks between the ages of like 14 to 28. Those folks folks just aren't working. And when they're not working, guess what they do? They get in trouble. They get in trouble, they experiment with drugs, the jails get full, and it's counterproductive, and all these increase societal costs. So we need to focus our attention, and our caucus is going to be focusing on increasing workforce participation, because jobs will go not where the tax credits are, not where the tax breaks are, but where the workforce is, the best qualified workforce. So that's where we need to double and redouble our efforts to create jobs.
So Delegate, you talked about extraction industries, and I want to move on to an energy bill that's going through both chambers. That bill directs the State Department of Environmental Protection to come up with a feasibility plan to comply with the EPA standards on carbon emissions, those proposed standards. What would you like to see in that plan eventually? They have to report it back to the legislature.
Well, obviously, I would like to see our DEP provide a plan that allows us to comply with the EPA standards, and if we're not going to be able to comply, at least come up with some alternative solutions. The problem that we face here in West Virginia is that we have an EPA who's not supportive of our coal industry, and we need to recognize the fact that the country is moving away from coal. Now, we can't give up on coal all at once or in its entirety, but we have to begin recognizing that if the country is moving away from coal, or at least coal technology as it exists today, we better start focusing our efforts on developing clean coal technology so we can keep mining coal but do it and burn it in a clean way. Because if we can't figure out how to burn it cleaner than we are and reduce the carbon emissions, then the country is going to move past us. Because what's happening is the investment bankers and financiers on Wall Street are not going to be willing to loan or invest billions of dollars to build a new power plant if 4 years later, with a presidential administration that's going to come in and say, sorry, you can't use that power plant because it's emitting too much carbon emissions. And so the world is moving to cleaner emission standards, whether we like it or not. So we need to figure out how we burn clean coal, but we need to understand how we're supposed to comply with some of these requirements so we can make adjustments accordingly.
Senator, did the state hurt itself by repealing the energy portfolio standard? The delegate says clean coal technology we're not investing in enough, and that was part of that standard.
It was, but quite frankly, the way the bill was drafted, we were already in compliance the day it passed, and I'm told, so I made the analogy, so at the time we passed it, it really didn't do anything, and at the end of the day, all the utilities, if you ask them, told you that were going to have no problem whatsoever in complying in 2020 or 2025. So at the end of the day, it wasn't going to do the repeal of that is going to do nothing either. So I made the analogy, the last I looked at my math, 0 plus 0 equals 0, and 0 minus 0 equals 0, because the bill wasn't really going to do anything. I think it was really just more of a resolution. It was sending a message that we were looking at other clean coal technologies, that frankly, I'm for an all of the above energy portfolio. I come from Marshall County, the leading coal producing county in the state of West Virginia. Together we're sitting on the mother lode of Marcellus and Utica shale up in our region as well. So, we have all of the above when it comes to energy portfolio. And interestingly enough, I've read some articles in the last few weeks, and I was glad to see we did retain some of the net metering because of solar opportunities as well. The leading energy industry sector in the country for the last 2 years has been solar, quite frankly. So, if those things are growing and someone wanted to put a solar production plant down in McDowell or Mingo County and have 1,000 people building solar panels, I guarantee you we would embrace those jobs.
Senator, moving forward, what is your strategy to get the Republican Party to look at or to deal with the Democratic agenda?
Well, what I intend to do, I don't intend to be an obstructionist. We're all here, whether my role is different or not. No one welded my seat to me to any seat or to my hand to any gavel. So my role is to basically pass the best legislation we can. And when they're right, I'm going to agree with them. And when they're wrong, I'm going to shine a bright light on it and to make sure the people of this state, when they're doing radical right agenda, radical that is wrong, I'm going to make sure the people of this state understand why it's wrong and why it hurts them. It hurts their families, it hurts their pocketbooks, and it hurts our communities when you're taking away rights of folks, number one, or if you're not creating the opportunities. For the energy portfolio bill, said it was going to create jobs in the coal fields, we're going to reduce utility rates. Well, I asked them to have a little study to prove empirically after 2 years whether or not it accomplished anything that they said it would accomplish, and they refused to do the study.
Let's get Delegate Miley in just briefly, your strategy moving forward dealing with the new majority.
Well, just like Senator Kessler said, we're here to work with the Republicans to move West Virginia forward. We may differ on how to get there, and that has started today, quite frankly. But we're all looking to arrive at the same destination, and we want to work with the Republicans to do that. But the way to do that is identifying our needs in the educational system, offering solutions to create a well-trained workforce, and not taking away rights from consumers, because that's not an inviting atmosphere to get consumers to come into the state of West Virginia. If they know they're going to come into
I'm sorry, we've run out of time, but thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you both for your time and for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Ashton.
In West Virginia, there are city streets and state roads. In a moment, we'll find out how counties could become more involved in road construction and maintenance. But first, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today.
Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 315 to modify provisions relating to civil actions filed under the Consumer Protection Act. The bill states that civil actions may be brought only by natural persons who purchase or lease goods, services, or real estate for personal, family, or household purposes. No action may be brought under this section to recover damages for personal injury or death. Senate Bill 316 to define a veteran-owned business and make those businesses exempt from paying the initial startup fees and the first 4 annual report fees. Senate Bill 322 to remove the unnecessary requirement of a mandatory electronic recount of ballots in recounts. Senate Bill 324 to increase the number of participants allowed in the Home Rule Pilot Program to allow the 7 municipalities who were not accepted in the Home Rule Pilot Program to reapply. Senate Bill 325 to set deadlines for candidates to file financial disclosure statements with the Ethics Commission. The bill disqualifies any candidate who fails to file the statement by the deadline. Up for passage in the Senate tomorrow, Senate Bill 8 to provide for a performance and efficiency audit of the Division of Highways. The audit shall examine, define, and determine areas of inefficiency, better practices, better allocations of funds, unused funds, methods of saving funds, appropriate number of employees, and the best use of taxpayer dollars.
Every session, one of the most talked about issues at the Capitol is funding the state's aging highway system. The governor mentioned the fiscal challenge in his State of the State address earlier this month, but the problem is a difficult one to solve. In a Senate Transportation Committee meeting today, senators were presented with one possible solution, one that would allow counties to be more involved in the construction and maintenance process. Senate Bill 258 is also known as the Letting Our Counties Act Locally Act and comes as the result of 2 years of work from stakeholders in Monongalia County. With aging roads and bridges that are becoming more and more difficult financially to maintain, members of county and city government teamed up with the local Chamber of Commerce and West Virginia University to find a solution. That group includes Billy Atkins, member of the Morgantown Chamber Board of Directors.
We've looked at ways that we could possibly raise some local funds. We recognize that the federal and state dollars aren't going to be there to address the road needs in our county.
So Atkins and his group are backing a bill to allow counties to address their own needs. Senate Bill 258 permits counties to create their own road improvement or expansion plans and fund them through a 1% sales and use tax. Atkins explains the taxes cannot be imposed until a county project is approved by the State Department of Transportation.
This, as you know, does not create a tax. It merely enables counties to that are so inclined and have the need to take the steps necessary to try to improve their roads. As was discussed, the tax would never be imposed until we have an agreed plan of the specific roads that are going to be built, and the funding is there available.
The sales and use taxes are collected at the state level and placed in a county-specific account in the State Road Fund. Another member of the Morgantown Chamber of Commerce, Jason Donahue, says although the bill came from their working group, it could benefit any county in the state who wants to take advantage of the added revenue.
We wanted it to not be specific to Mon County. We wanted it to be a tool that could be used voluntarily through any part of the state. And based upon some preliminary numbers, it would make a substantial impact on our transportation needs that we've identified in Mon County. But if it were applied across the state in every county, it could provide as much funding as $2 billion for highway construction.
The Governor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Highways, compiled in 2012 to study road funding issues, says West Virginia needs about $1 billion each year to maintain its current statewide highway system. In Mon County, they're predicting the bill could raise $70 million over 30 years. That's according to West Virginia University economics professor emeritus Tom Witt, who calls it a jobs bill.
And if you look at the economic multipliers associated with that $70 million in Montague County can lead to, during the construction period, over 910 jobs throughout the rest of West Virginia, including Montague County.
Senator Bob Beach of Mon County says while any county may participate in the program, it's not necessarily ideal for small rural areas. Still, he says, other parts of the state could benefit.
Not all counties actually have to adopt this language. Mon County will be a perfect fit. I think that would work for Harrison County as well, and right on down the interstate to Kanawha County, Cabell County, and other counties that have that growth and need to address the transportation problems they have.
The committee approved the bill and moved it on to the Senate Finance Committee for further consideration. Senators also took up 2 bills from the governor that would expire funds from special infrastructure accounts to help balance the 2016 general revenue budget. Senate Bill 266 would move some $11 million from the state road fund, and Senate Bill 268 would take nearly $4.5 million from a fund used to maintain and construct railroads in the state. Both Senator Bob Plymel of Wayne County and Committee Chair Chris Walters expressed concerns with the bills during the meeting, saying they only continue to hurt an infrastructure system that is already ailing. The governor's 2 pieces of budget legislation were moved forward to the Finance Committee, where Walters says committee members are working on a compromise with the governor's office and other stakeholders. Now here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today.
Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 2387 to initiate a comprehensive transformation in school leadership through a process that includes input from reports by Vision Shared and Imagine West Virginia to the State Board of Education to assist it in developing recommendations for better schools to the legislature and the governor. House Bill 2391 authorizes the State Board of Education to annually grant a waiver to a county board to implement a full-day early childhood education program that has children in attendance 4 days per week and uses the 5th day for staff to work on program delivery to improve student learning. House Bill 2394 to repeal the additional tax on coal effective July 1, 2015. At 56 cents per ton, the tax goes toward Workers' Compensation Fund debt reduction. House Bill 2410, requiring the Office of Emergency Services to coordinate with local radio and television stations to broadcast public service announcements with information as to the location of emergency shelters. The bill also provides tax credits for use of natural gas, diesel, or propane-fueled emergency generators. The bill also provides a protection from civil or criminal liability to persons who donate food during times of emergencies. House Bill 2420 to prohibit the use of night vision technology and drones or other unmanned aerial vehicles for the hunting or taking of wildlife. And House Bill 2425 to require that in order to graduate from high school or obtain a general educational development diploma, a pupil must correctly answer at least 60 of the 100 questions listed on a test that is identical to the civics portion of the naturalization test. On second reading in the House tomorrow, Senate Bill 3 to codify existing common law in West Virginia as it relates to the duty of care possessors of property owe trespassers. And House Bill 2138 to allow non-commercial recreational aircraft to land on property and limiting the liability of the landowner.
This has been the Legislature Today. The House and Senate Education Committees will hold a public hearing about charter schools tomorrow at 5 p.m. in the House of Delegates chamber. The West Virginia Charter School Act of 2015 has been introduced in both chambers. Charter schools receive state funding but are independent from county school systems. That public hearing again is 5 o'clock tomorrow in the House chamber. On our program tomorrow, we'll continue meeting the new committee chairs at this session. Joining us will be Senator Mike Hall of Putnam County and Delegate Eric Nelson of Kanawha County. They are chairing the powerful finance committees. On Thursday, we'll talk about education issues with the new chairs of those committees, Senator Dave Seipold of Preston County and Delegate Amanda Pasden of Monongalia County. I'm Ashton Mara. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
The High Technology Foundation, headquartered at the I-79 Technology Park in Fairmont. Online at wvhtf.org.